Good morning, everybody. As we go to the Chitas of today, today's Wednesday, we're holding in the fourth reading of the portion of Vayakel. We're holding on chapter 36, verse number 8. Vayasu kol chacham lei ba'isa malacha, and all the wise men, wise-hearted amongst those of the craftsmen did. As a Mishkan, the Mishkan, Asesi Yiriyah is the 10 tapestries, the Sheish Mashazar was woven out of twined linen. Tailors by Goman together with Turkish wool and purple wool and scarlet wool. Maisa Cheshev, they were made of woven design. Shnei Keruvim, Maisa Cheshev, they were made of two woven designs of cherubim, both two different designs on either side of this curtain. The length of each tapestry was 28 cubits. And each tapestry, the width was 4 cubits. Each one. Each one of them had the exact same measurement. Then he put together 5 of the tapestries. He sewed them together, 5 of the tapestries, one to the other. And he connected the other 5 tapestries together, one to one, sewing them one to the other. Then he made loops of Turkish wool, turquoise wool. I'm sorry. At the edge of one tapestry, and the end of the first set, he did the same at the end of the endmost tapestry of the second. So then he took the two tapestries that he connected the 5 things together, and now he connected these two not by sewing it, but by creating these loops. Also be 50 loops on one of the tapestries. Also we tell you they made 50 loops then the other tapestry, the other set. Each of these loops were opposite one echas, they're facing each other. And then he made he made 50 clasps of gold. And with these clasps, he put them together. He connected them all together. Achas al achas, he connected them all together, but him in the with the clasps. Mishkan echad, and now this Mishkan, the covering, the first covering of the Mishkan became one. It's called the Mishkan because it was the original roof. That was the roof, or so to say, of the Mishkan. It was the beauty of the roof of the Mishkan. And then he made a second cover. He made sheets of goat hair. The oil, that's called the oil. That was the protective roof. So that's the one. The first roof was called the Mishkan. The second roof was called an oil. Ashte Esirius also made them 11 sheets. Each one of the length of each sheet was made shleishim amah. This was the second one. It was longer. It was 30 amas. V'arba amas recha was still the same width. 4 amas its width, but it had another sheet. It was one exact same in length to each all these 11 sheets of goats here. Then he put 5 of them together. The Sheshis and the other 6 he sewed them together. He made the exact same thing. He created 50 loops. He made 50 loops on one of the tapestries. He made another 50 loops at the other end of the sheet. And then he made 50 copper clasps. The bottom one was silver. This was copper. Now the whole thing that's gold here, it was the blackish color, which was totally covered the entire base of the Mishkan. So really it covered over the even the under the Yiriyas, the Mishkan, the cover of the Mishkan itself. Then he made a third cover with the roof, and that was on the roof itself of the Mishkan. He made a roof, a tent of red dyes ram. There's not exactly clear if you remember the Rashi in Tetzaveh. In Tetzaveh, with the Rashi says over there, the Machlekes over there, Yehuda, exactly how this was done. Was it made 2-3 pieces, 2 pieces, or was it 1 piece? Not exactly clear. The Machlekes exactly how the top roof looked. It was made out of 10 dyed ram's skins, and the roof of Tacha skins was above it. And there was the 3 different parts that covered the Mishkan, 3 different parts. That completes the Chumash for today. Unusual Chumash without a Rashi. Okay, we continue the 35th chapter of Tanya. Beautiful chapter. The Alter Rebbe now returns to the subject of the light of the Shekhinah, which rests upon man only through mitzvahs, which alone can serve as the oil for this light. That's it. That's the only thing that can give oil, because just like oil is consumed and becomes part of the light, so too a mitzvah is consumed. Is the only thing that a person can connect totally through the avodah of a person, through action of a person. He can totally connect with God. That's the only thing he can do, is a mitzvah. He points out that the effect of this light upon the person performing a mitzvah varies on the category of the mitzvah from one mitzvah to another. Those mitzvah forms in one's thought and speech cause the light of the Shekhinah to rest upon the divine soul alone, drawing its light upon the body and upon the animal soul requires a performance of mitzvah involved action. So for the animal soul, for the physicality to ultimately change, you simply cannot do it with machshava alone, even with dibur, with speech. You need to ultimately bring it down into a physical act. Ma'aseh hu ha'ikar. The action is what's important. Where one harnesses the power of the animal soul, giving a life-giving soul, and the Alter Rebbe is going to say, when a person studies Torah, using his power of thought and speech, so then his neshama, which is his godly divine soul, with its 2 inner garments, right? Because the neshama, we explained in Tanya, has 3 garments. Neshama has 10 manifestations, 10 svirot, but that's the inner aspect of the neshama. But then the neshama has 3 garments, which is machshava, thought, dibur, speech, and ma'aseh, and action. These are the 3 garments of the neshama. So now within those 3 garments, we have an inner aspect and an outer aspect. And what's the inner aspect? The machshava is most inner aspect. What's the not the most inner aspect is dibur, speech. But it's in both of them, machshava, dibur, to the concept of action is like inner and outer. Shem koyach dibur machshava, right? So thought is obviously an inner garment as it connects to the soul itself. This is why thought functions ceaselessly, it never ends. It is closely bound to the soul. And the soul presence is constant, therefore thought never ends. Always keeps. Speech too is eternal when compared to action, which acts upon an object outside the soul. So the speech and thought are more inner concept in comparison to action, which is a total a concept that's out of the soul. The chlal is Beit Havayim, absorbed within the light of God. Baruch Hu, blessed be Him, and they emerge within it in a perfect unity. So the thought and the speech, these 2 garments of the soul, become one with godliness that it's clothing itself in, because it's totally it's totally consumed within the light. This can constitute the resting of the Shekhinah on his divine soul. As the statement is said in Pirkei Avos, in Ethics of Our Father, it says, even if one person is sitting and learning Torah, the presence of God is with him. Because his garments of thought and speech become totally bottled, become consumed by it. So meaning, in this case, the Shekhinah rests upon his soul and upon its faculties of thought and speech, which are engaged in the mental or oral study of Torah. But be able to draw this light up, not only into thought and speech, but al gufay, to be able to bring the Shekhinah into his body, Nafesh Bahamis into his animal soul, that his body, his physical reality, and his animal soul should also become an abode for godliness. Shiachyin is upon the vitalizing soul, actually clothed in the body and providing it with corporal life force. The only way to do that is thought's not going to help you, and speech is not going to help you. The only way to do that is through physical action. Hanasis idea guf mamish, which is done through the body. By giving tzedakah. So I take my hand, my body, my physical body is doing the mitzvah. That's why you need a pushka and every day to put in a penny, because then your physical body is doing something. You're using your physical body, your physical reality to do this mitzvah. In this way, the actual power of the body engaged in this act. Example, one don's tefillin. It's physical strength in his arm that impels in the emotion that constitutes the fulfillment of the mitzvah. And therefore, this bodily power, as giving its tzedakah, is absorbed. Is absorbed. So when I take my hand and my hand puts on tefillin, or my hand gives tzedakah, or my hand lights Shabbos candles, or whatever my hand might do, shakes somebody's hand, gives some person a hug, whatever it might be do, my hand has now become nullified in the action, in this action. It became like a vehicle for something that's good. And what does it mean? It became a vehicle to godliness at that moment. Says, is absorbed in the divine light and will and emerges with it in a perfect unity. At that moment, when I'm doing the mitzvah, this bodily concept, or I walk to a mitzvah, I walk to a shul, that bodily action is bottled, becomes one with the mission of God, with God's will. With this power constitutes the third garment of the divine soul. Mentioned in chapter 4 in Tanya, the three levushim, the three garments, the divine soul expresses the faculty of action to perform the mitzvahs. And when the faculty of action is absorbed within the divine will, then in addition, the power of the vitalizing soul actually clothes within the body. The power of the soul derived from the mamish. I'm transforming. When he says mamish, he means that's not a philosophy. This is a reality. So whether you know it or not, Alter Rebbe is telling you the reality. The reality is, Alter Rebbe says, when you do a mitzvah with your body has now become totally part of godliness. A yichud gomer, with a connection that can't find this connection anywhere else in the world. And not only that, nepach merah, klippas noegid, then you take a klippa that shines and you transform it, because it became nullified like the oil that comes absorbed in the godliness. Nepach merah l'tov, you change everything negative into good. Nichla mamish, and it's actually absorbed. Dusha, in holiness. Just like your godly soul is absorbed in holiness, your animalistic soul is absorbed in holiness. At that moment, my animalistic soul is totally absorbed in holiness. For it is the power of the animal soul that implements and performs the acts constituting this mitzvah. I cannot do the mitzvah to give this money to tzedakah without my hand, and without my my animal soul, without my vitalizing soul doing it. So therefore, that's why the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe also, but the Rebbe also pushed the concept of giving tzedakah. I always a pushka near you, because that every moment that you do that mitzvah, even if it's a penny, every time you give tzedakah, you're simply taking your whole body and bringing about a revelation of God in this reality. True, the divine soul is the force motivating one of doing the mitzvah, yet the divine soul cannot directly activate the body to perform physical action. To don tefillin, for example, it can accomplish is only through the agency of the animal soul, which serves as a medium between the divine soul and the body. And that's it. So the godly soul always wants to do a mitzvah. But ultimately, without the animal soul, especially by a Beinoni, by a middleman, without the animal soul, he's not going anywhere. It's not doing anything. And therefore, that is the medium. And the godly soul realizes that's his journey. And the only way he can do this mitzvah is if the animal soul is going to go with him. Because without the animal soul, without the power of the animal soul, then my godly soul would not affect the body at all. That's the reality. So without this animal soul, my godly soul is godly, and it has godly desires, and has godly love, and has all this love and desire. Well, what is it worth? Garnished. Because it needs to work through this animal soul. It needs to work through me. So without me, what is it worth? It could have stayed in Gan Eden, and it could have stayed in upper worlds. In this world, without me going and learning and davening and giving tzedakah and putting on tefillin and doing this, then the godly soul has no agenda. And therefore, the godly soul realizes the greatness of this animal soul, this vital soul. And therefore, it tries to impress on the animal soul to do more and more, because that's its journey. That's its true journey. And therefore, it cannot accomplish its journey in this world, especially in the world of action. It cannot accomplish the third garment. Maybe it can accomplish in thought, or the guy can philosophize, the guy can have a good can talk good, but he cannot accomplish in the real world of action without this animal soul giving the tzedakah, putting on the tefillin, walking to do a mitzvah, doing the mitzvah. Cannot accomplish in the third garment whatsoever. And the third garment is the most important garment, because that's the garment of action. That's the mitzvah. That's the real will of God. Dira b'tachtonim. Dira b'tachtonim is in the lower realms. So even in the three garments of thought, speech, and action, what's the tachtonim? What's the lowest realm of these three garments is the action. So that's the expression. God didn't only want to have a dwelling place on a person's mind. God didn't even only want to have a dwelling place in a person's speech. God wanted to dwell with tachtonim, in the lowest realm, in action. That's what God wanted. He wanted to transform the physical. And the physical cannot be transformed if the person is not going to do the action. And that's the third garment. Because that's the point. Everything is ruchnius in comparison to this physical action. Even thought and speech is all ruchnius, is all spirituality until the person does it. And therefore, that's what we try to accomplish. If you understand, Chassidus came to the world to change the Gashmi. The Torah came to the world to change the Gashmi, to change the physical. That's the aspect of action. We cannot ultimately change the true physical if we're not going to do the mitzvah. So the body, so we talk about oneself, the body is the physical. The body, when I can transform my body, when my body does the mitzvah, when my mind does the mitzvah, when my speech does the mitzvah, it's wonderful. But it's really not the body, even though thought, speech is also the body, because I can't speak without my body and I can't think without my head. But in comparison to my action, my hands, that's why tefillin is on your head and your hands. You have to have the three aspects of thought, speech, and action. When you put on tefillin, you have to put on your hands. You put on your head, and you put on your hands. Tefillin sharesh and tefillin shayad. But ultimately, what is the thought is spiritual in comparison to the physical body. The simple concept of the physical body doing the action. So the body and the divine soul are antithetical. As the spiritual and the material dimensions, generally, they're two opposites. The two opposites, the body, the physical, and the spiritual are two opposites. That's why in comparison to thought, speech, and action, The thought and speech is mamish. There's like a big gap between thought, speech, and action. It's a whole different reality. A whole different reality. That's why in Kabbalah it's the letter Hey. The letter Hey, the first two lines are connected. So they're more connected. The third part is disconnected, and that goes on Maisa. So the last Hey is Malchus, is the aspect of the connection to the world. So you have the three parts to the letter Hey. The first two parts are connected, like a Dalet, and the third part is a leg on its own, because it's a total different reality. It's a total different reality, and that reality is the reality of action. Mutza b'neim, and what's the middle? What's the real middle? Your animal soul is not so, he doesn't care so much about thought speech, because he knows thought, you can speak, you can think whatever you want, and you can do whatever you want. What's the real middle rung is when it comes to action. That's where your animal soul is either going to agree or going to disagree. And that's where we have the struggle. We can think wonderful thoughts, and we can even say wonderful things, but are we going to do wonderful things? That's really the question. And the only way I can do this wonderful thing is if I can impress on my animal soul to do this wonderful thing, to do this mitzvah. And not only to do it, but to do it b'simcha. So therefore, there's a lot of levels of doing. I can do a mitzvah, but I do it, I had no choice. I feel like I don't want to do it, because it's all the heaviness of this animal soul. And then I can do this mitzvah with joy. Now I have elevated my animal soul. So that's where it all lays, right? So in the intermediary between them is the vitalizing. This is where your animal soul, this is where you know, this is where I know where my animal soul stands. With the way I go and daven, the way I learn, the way I do a mitzvah, that's where I know how much my animal soul is involved, and how much my animal soul is not so involved in this whole reality. He's not so interested in this whole thing. He's doing it out of rote, or he's doing it out of force, or he's doing it half asleep. So that's the mamutza, that's the intermediary, and the godly soul understands its spirit, that's what it needs to accomplish. That it needs to accomplish to awaken up the animal soul. The third garment, that the animal soul should do the action like the godly soul does the action. Like the godly soul wants to do the action. And then it becomes a yichud between the godly soul and the animal soul. Then the action becomes infused and becomes totally nullified to the godly soul, to the godly shechina, to the God's will. It's not the godly soul. It's the will of God, which the animal soul, which the godly soul wants. Which this animal soul is clothed in the blood of man, in his heart, the whole gufa in his whole body. So the nature of the animal soul is such that it's coursed, most material-like level of its spiritual substance. Of its spiritual substance that is capable of clothing itself within the blood. Since the animal soul is the divine soul medium of affecting the body, its active powers is also observed into holiness when one performs a mitzvah. And that's what happened. So when I take my animal soul and I do the actual mitzvah, I accomplish the actual mitzvah, that's when my animal soul itself becomes totally absorbed in the Shekhinah, in the presence of God, and my animal soul and my godly soul could become also united as one. That completes the beautiful Tanya of today. Today is the 19th day of the month, which is chapter 90 to 96. You do those 7 chapters, you do the chitas of the day. The Rebbe writes in the Yom of today, the 19th day of Adar, number 1, even ordinary chassidim were lucid in their knowledge of Tanakh, the prophets. There was a customer in time of, many years ago. After davening Shachas, they studied a Mishnah. Then, while folding the talis and tefillin, they would recite a certain portion of Tanakh. They would go through the Nevi'im, Ksuvim. So appointed a portion that concluded the Tanakh, and they used to complete the whole Tanakh in 3 months. It took them pretty long to put away the talis and tefillin. The next one, the Rebbe says that Moshe Isserles related, the Alter Rebbe taught us that the Aleph of Chassidus is to use our natural traits and instincts in Avodah. The beginning of Avodah is to employ the natural characteristics of man's powers. For example, the natural dominion of the mind over the heart. That's a natural thing. Use out your nature. That's your third lavush. Use out your three lavush, machshavah, dibur, ma'aseh, for the sake of Avodas Hashem, for the service of God. I wish you all a wonderful, beautiful, happy, and healthy day. I invite you all tonight. We are doing the last class of the Talmud decoded in sixth class of the Day of Light, decoding of the Talmud, tonight at 7 p.m. See you all tomorrow. Continue to learn the Chitas of it.